Could this movie be any more self-aware? Honestly. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is a film starring Nicolas Cage as Nick Cage, a fictionalized Nick Cage who accepts an appearance at a billionaire superfan's birthday party, then is recruited by the CIA as an informant to take down a said billionaire who's actually a drug kingpin. What's up, everybody, and welcome to this film's review. I'm not going to say the name a lot because it is a long name. Not as long as Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. But thank you nonetheless for clicking on this video. I really do appreciate the time and effort. First of all, let me just say, I love Nicolas Cage. I've seen most of his films, Con Air, Face Off, The Rock. Most of his old school stuff, of course, was his best work. And Con Air being like the top of my list. Yeah, like I said, most of his old school stuff. And I know I'm going to be on the island with this because most people didn't like these. The Ghost Rider movies. I know, I'm on the island with that, but it's okay. We're all different. So after Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, which came out 10 years ago, he vanished. Nicolas Cage basically vanished. He was erased, pretty much. And then next thing I know, he was in these direct-to-DVD, Redbox type movies. You know, that just goes to show you right there, a lot has changed since the 90s. Star power is just a thing of the past. Just knowing that that much disrespect goes to an actor like Nicolas Cage, same thing with Bruce Willis, a little bit with Sylvester Stallone, but I'm surprised Arnold Schwarzenegger hadn't gone through this as much. But that just goes to show you, star power, it just doesn't matter. It breaks my heart in a way. It really does. Knowing that a legend like Nicolas Cage can go through that. It's just, bring more movies with him out in theaters and actually treat this man with respect. That's all I'm saying. Okay, moving on. Then he pops out with this movie, which I had no idea what that was being made. I had no idea what I was in for. I only seen the trailer like a month ago, which was the first trailer. Wasn't really that impressed. I had no idea what it was. And then I saw a second trailer and I read more into it. Got me a little bit intrigued. But was this movie actually worth it? Did this actually bring back the nostalgia that was Nicolas Cage back in the day? Let's delve into the positives of this film. First of all, I gotta say, this movie puts the self and awareness. This was all sorts of self-awareness. I mean, it's just plastered everywhere. It screams self-awareness. It's like a slap in the face. You have this film that definitely knew what it wanted to be. It definitely knew what it was. And they would show several scenes where Nick Cage would actually explain the plot of this movie, which involves around the story where these two guys, they meet up and then they start talking about their favorite movies. Some of the movies that Nick Cage has actually played in, I hadn't really actually watched all of them, but like some of the major ones I have. I do admit they did mention some movies that I hadn't really heard of. One guy said, you know, a certain movie that Nicolas Cage was in, and Nick Cage was like, oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. One guy had a script, and then Nicolas Cage said he read it, and he thought it was genius. He thought it was the most fantastic thing he ever read in his life, and this and that. And then they started reenacting some scenes out, and it's like they were trying to make this movie. It wasn't really a movie within a movie, but they just kept on talking about it, and it was just so self-aware. And the self-awareness is so much out there that they even go as far as mentioning marketing as like with every film that comes out. That's how on the nose this was. It was pretty brilliant. It was pretty clever. It was nuts. But I really do think it worked. It worked for this movie. Just the whole self-awareness thing was just in your face constantly. It's like a much less horror version of Scream, if you want to put it that way. But again, it did work for the film. And the comedy was really decent. You know, and that felt heavily on the comedy. It was pretty decent. Some of the dialogue just cracked me up. Like there's this one scene where Tiffany Haddish was talking to her partner shortly after they recruited Nicolas Cage and was talking about, have you seen Croods 2? And the partner was like, why would I see Croods 2? I'm 44 years old. I've seen movies like Face Off and Con Air. I swear, I see a lot of myself in that character. That would actually be me. I mean, you see that in the trailer. It didn't actually play off like that in the movie. Like, sometimes they have to re-edit, and not everything you see in the movie is what it is in the trailer, but again, I still see a lot of myself in that character. Nicolas Cage was pretty good. He actually plays a fictionalized version of himself. It's basically a movie of Nicolas Cage playing Nick Cage, but not Nicolas Cage. I know, my head hurts too. And they throw this whole signature move on Cage's behalf, which actually makes sense. And it was actually pretty funny. Again, it makes sense because he is the sensei of action films. And that, to me, is like something you give to your sensei or something. And that, it makes sense because Nicolas Cage is a legend.
Nick Cage.
Yeah, he plays it off pretty well. And the chemistry between him and Pedro Pascal, it was great. Plenty of comedic moments. They played off each other really well. And of course, it goes back to what I said about the past Nicolas Cage trope. Like, they have a lot of Nicolas Cage tropes. Like, they mention a bunch of what he's been in. Like Con Air, he actually opens up with a scene of this couple actually watching the end of Con Air. And I was like, oh yeah, I know that. That's pretty cool. And it's just a bunch of different things that actually did make this movie enjoyable. But that being said, I should warn you, this is far from an action movie. Because I hadn't really heard that much about this movie, I only really started reading up about it in the past month. I did make a big mistake of thinking that this was going to be more action. But it's more character driven, and because of that, that was my downfall. So let's dive into the negatives, and it's got to be said, no matter what, even though this is my fault, there wasn't hardly any action. And I get it, that's just not the type of movie this was. I mean, you got a good third act, but the whole entire movie really involves around these two guys, between Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal. That's what it really revolves around. Like these two brothers getting together, not actually brothers, but like brothers and friends, just getting together and just, talking about their favorite movies and how Pedro Pascal was such a Nicolas Cage, big, huge Nicolas Cage fan. That's basically what this movie was all about. So if you're expecting action, don't. Don't make the same mistake I did. Otherwise, you'll feel the way I do right now. It is not your basic, old school, Nicolas Cage movie. You can go in there for the nostalgic because of all the stuff that they talk about. But don't expect too much action. You will be disappointed. And for my final negative, and this is just a little small, minor, kind of a breeze, but there was a couple scenes where Nicolas Cage was actually talking to his younger self. Like his psyche or whatever. I mean, he wasn't really there, but it was his, mind working or something. He was talking to a much younger Nicolas Cage, and that didn't really help the movie. It didn't really help its case. I didn't think it moved the movie along at all. It just added to the somewhat boringness, I guess you could say. Even though there was a lot of good moments in it, that just didn't help its case. Would I ever watch this movie again? Probably not, unless I was actually watching it with somebody who really wanted to see it. Would I ever add it in my collection? No, definitely not. But it still had its moments. Don't get that wrong, it still had its moments. It's just not something I feel the need to actually watch again. In the end, guys, this film wasn't bad. Just don't expect hardcore action. Just don't expect too much in that era. Otherwise, you'll be disappointed. And again, that was my downfall. So if you're a fan of self-awareness, you'll have an absolute blast. As far as action goes, please temper your expectations and go on the fence. So the unbearable weight of massive talent. Have you seen this before? Was this something that was on your radar, at all? Have you heard about this? Was this one of your favorite Nicolas Cage movies? Did you appreciate all the nostalgic and all the self-awareness that this movie was plastered all over with? Or was this not for you? Was this not something that you enjoyed? Was this something that you thought was going to be more action-filled like I did, unfortunately? Leave your comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, once again for watching this video. Like, subscribe, comment, and share the big 4 as always. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.